So do you think that there should be no death penalty, right?
No, I don't think.
Okay, no problem. I'm saying that that position is as viable from a liberal perspective and a human rights perspective as a position that says that there can be a death penalty if it's regulated by the state and it's agreed upon by the people.
Why are you conflating? Okay, I understand that you said that human rights are an outgrowth of liberalism, but human rights can oppose liberalism.
Here's what I would say. It's
and
not
like human rights are a standalone issue. Human rights don't have to be attached to any political, religious, or social system. They can be a standalone principle that other systems can be tested against. It's not
okay,
like,
but then here's the problem.
Right, please.
They will only be understood through a liberal paradigm. We only understand.
Not exactly.
No. Okay, here's my challenge to you then. Can you explain to me or show me, especially in the Western vernacular, and in the academic world,
right, okay,
where human rights have been as a term has been expressed in a non-liberal paradigm?
in a non-liberal paradigm. You had forms of human rights in Yugoslavia, which was by no means a liberal.
No, but those. At what point are we talking about?
So we're talking about after the Second World War, after basically the formation of Yugoslavia. So Yugoslavia as basically a socialist state, right?
Okay.
They had a barter of. I wouldn't call them human rights. I mean, they were in the end human rights.
Call it human rights.
Right.
Same in Soviet Union.
No.
The right to a job, the right to a house, the right to healthcare. That's what they.
Let me explain. Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. It's not liberal, and it is the definition of human rights.
You're saying it's not liberal. I'm saying it is liberal, and I explain why. The reason why it's liberal is because you're conflating economic and political liberalism with a social liberalism. You could justifiably have a political communism, an economic communism, and a social liberalism.
You can, but those are very incompatible.
No, they're not incompatible. I don't think they're incompatible at all. You can have a state of affairs where people still use a liberal paradigm in their social interactions and not in their political or economic interactions, which was
that's fine.
Which was the case, by the way. And I'm going to be controversial here. Say what you want, but in Hitler's Germany.
What do you mean exactly?
If you look at the pictures in Germany, you tell me what kind of system applied there. Yeah, you had a fascistic system, but the fascistic nationalistic system, but that was an extreme kind of neoconservative type liberalism, authoritarian liberalism, which depended on a heavy social contract theory. What I'm saying is,
oh man, like if you take a piece of rock and heat it up, you get lava, man. Like you already lost the identity of what you wanted to define. So I mean,
no, I'm not. Because what I'm saying is, how do you define social liberalism? We define it through the works of, for example, John Stuart Mill. The harm principle.
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want so long as someone doesn't harm you. Now, what I'm saying is that did they not have those laws, kind of, in their own way, in the Soviet Union? They did. They did. But it wasn't not in a political and economic way.
Not fully.
Well, not fully anyway, my friend. Look, they're not fully in America, as you know, right? But that's what I'm saying. They still look. The conceptions.
And it was such a perversion of those principles that I don't even know if
you have to appreciate.
They apply.
Look, before let me make this extremely clear for you. But after 1948, that's when the United Nations had the Declaration of Human Rights. After World War II, which ended in 1945, right? Universal. The Soviet Union did they say we don't agree with that?
No, but they actually were tricky about their definition of that.
They were tricky about, look, the Soviet Union was tricky about the New World Order that America wanted to make through the IMF and the WHO and all these things.
After the Gold
But the thing is, there's nothing real. But look, the point is this, is that those Declaration of Human Rights, which sprung about because of a social liberalism, was accepted by many of the communist states.
Sure.
So you can have human rights, social human rights, in a communist state.
But it was perverted. They fiddled it.
It's perverted everywhere. It's perverted in America right now, as we know, right? Maybe to a great extent.
It's a great example of why you can have that as a standalone basis to measure the extent of the application of human rights.
Here's what I'm saying. When they were developed from an American paradigm, when they made the document, the UN Declaration of Human Rights, how did they do it? Who was the ones making the decisions? It was Americans making the majority of the decisions.
No, it was Russia as well.
Yeah, of course they were there, but the majority of decision making in the UN is by America, especially after World War II, right?
Sure, but I think the nationality of those making the law
they were
is
influenced.
besides the point of its actual validity.
No, it's not, because let me explain why. When they were making the UN Declaration, they based many of their precepts on the Constitution of America and the Declaration of Human Rights.
Sure.
So when they did that, remember we said that goes back, those documents go back to social liberalism.
Sure.
Therefore, there's a trickle down all the way from social liberalism, obviously Mill came after, right? But the social liberalism, which is also espoused by John Locke, Montesquieu and those guys, went through to the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and then made its way into the UN Declaration of Human Rights.
Sure.
Those were not opposed in a wholehearted sense by the Soviets or the communists. Therefore, when we talk about human rights, therefore, it's impossible to conceive of them outside of a liberal paradigm.
So you're saying that it's been imposed upon the world? You're saying it's been imposed upon the world?
What I'm saying is when we talk about human rights, it's almost impossible to talk
Western
about...
values have been imposed upon the world.
What I'm saying is when we talk about human rights, especially those conceived of after 1948, it's almost impossible to conceive of them outside of a liberal paradigm. Therefore, if we find a contradiction between what is known to us as human rights, in an ideal sense, which we say doesn't exist in the real world, and also in the sense of social contract or what a state actually allows, then the question is, who's the arbitrator? The answer is really the arbitrator is the sovereign. The parliament will be the arbitrator.
That's not necessary.
Well, that is, you're saying it's not logically necessary.
Look, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me tell. Yes.
I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, you don't need, like, if you have a set of human rights as a principle, just as a principle, as a measuring stick, as whatever you want to call it, and you take that as a minimum sort of rights should be allowed to its citizens, wherever, whenever. You don't need the world police to measure yourself against those standards. Whether a country decides to be the world police and enforce those is an entirely different matter, right? But you don't need a sovereign to basically orient yourself towards a certain set of principles. And in the same way that as a person, you don't need a sort of someone waving a stick over your head to abide to a certain set of principles. In the same way,
one of the human rights is that a state should be sovereign.
sure.
So, okay, my question is this. What should be prioritized? The human right number, 17, which says that the state should be sovereign, or human right number 1 or 2, which says that human beings should be free?
I would say number 1 and 2, because you do not have the prerequisites for any of the ones below.
No, but you would say that,
below.
by the way, you would say that in some cases and not others. Like, for example, in the case where there's murder going on and so on, you would say the sovereignty of the state should take the day and that person should go to jail or something, right? Someone commits murder.
No, listen.
But that's exactly what's happened. There's a whole load of Islamic countries, Islamic Muslim countries that have never signed up to the Declaration of Human Rights. They have their own version, which is very similar.
I think Saudi and another country, Iran, wasn't it?
15. There's a load of them.
No, I don't know if it's 15.
There
It was a few of them, but now they're all signed up.
They're doing exactly what you say.
But, yeah.
They've sort of said, look, this doesn't fit our paradigm, is that the right word? It doesn't fit our model, and we don't accept it. And that's sort of been accepted by the UN grudgingly. They're not happy with it. But
I agree with that. So,
I wouldn't say accepted, I would just say recognized.
Can you see the point?
I'm sorry.
You want us to look, when you think about it deeply, what I'm saying is as simple as this, and I think you will agree with me. I think you really will agree with me. When sort of absolutely, unrestrictedly, if all human rights had to exist at the same time, all 30 of them, in the world, they would definitely contradict each other.
it wouldn't work. China wouldn't agree.
No, you agreed previously. Let me explain why. Because, do you know when you agreed? When I said to you, if there was a contradiction between the state sovereign...
let me explain.
I said, this is the question I asked you, and you took the premise on board. I said, if there was a contradiction between the state sovereign and the and freedom of speech or expression, which one should take priority? You said the freedom of expression or speech, right? No problem. That's a fine arbitration. That's a fine mitigation. That is a fine answer. However, what you've accepted is that there's a possibility for contradiction there.
There's always a possibility for contradiction in any system that allows for freedom of choice.
There you have it. So that's basically my
Each
argument.
country does what it wants to do, basically.
No, but listen, just because there is a possibility for contradiction, that doesn't mean that this contradiction arises as a logical contradiction. This just arises due to
Yeah, so what I'm saying, even if you wanted to look at it just from a human rights perspective, what I'm saying is this, is that the human rights that we're looking at here, there has to be arbitration. If you want to arbitrate it through the sovereign or through democracy or through whatever you want, there has to be arbitration. Now, really and truly, this is my understanding after a long time of looking into the matter. Your opinion is as valid as someone who says, look, the sovereign should take control in these situations where there's a national security or breach of the
What do you
peace.
mean by sovereign? Like a king or something?
The state,
sovereign
the
authority,
government,
like
the
the
government.
people.
Okay,
Like the
look,
state.
so
So
there's
if someone commits this heinous crime, they should be in prison. If they commit this heinous crime, they should be killed. That's as valid on both liberalism and human rights as someone who says, well, no, actually, they shouldn't be. Because really and truly, who is the arbitrator? That's why they bring democracy in, because democracy is a useful tool.
It rests upon
Yeah.
the fact that one of the human rights is that a state should be sovereign. But I would argue, look, a state is not a human person. Why would you bring that up as a human right when a state is not a person?
Because the whole document is talking to states.
Sure.
It's asking them to.
That's how it works. That's how it works.
Look, and this is about.
Because China does what it wants to do. Muslim countries do what they want to do. All countries across the world do what they want to do. In
Yes,
Soviet
but
Russia.
there is a difference between what they do and what they ought to do, or what we should strive to do. Don't you agree?
Look. Here's it.
And one more before I.
Yeah.
This is the final. This is the closing statement.
But I think we
right?
agree on many points.
I absolutely do. The only really big point of contention I have is the sort of part where you say the contradiction arises from rights being granted to humans universally, but also the right of a state to impose laws and so. I don't think this is a contradiction for one reason only. A state is not a human. A state is sovereign. That means the state has the right to apply the law. However, it has the right to apply the law as long as it doesn't infringe upon any other of the human rights.
But who defines those infringements? The state does. So it's a bit of secularity, isn't it?
No, but it isn't. Look, if I say, for instance, a state wants to, if we say that a person has the right to life, right? They have the right to stay alive, and the state says we want to
Kill the person.
Kill the person. Well, there is no contradiction there.
But that's the only way it can work.
No, but that's what it does all the time.
No, but I'm not saying.
China what to
Look,
do.
but I'm not
when
saying.
China can't tell us what to do.
Sure, but look, I'm not saying.
It has to be national. And any time that somebody actually starts saying, I don't like what you're doing in your country, that country turns around and says, that's none of your business. That's how it works.
But I'm not saying that this is.
That's how it works in Saudi
yeah.
Arabia, that's how it works in China, that's how it works in the West.
I'm not saying that it's not what's happened. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying this is the state of reality. No.
Yeah.
What you are describing is the current state of affairs.
But, yeah.
What I'm saying is human rights should at the very least be a sort of principle or foundation of what we should strive for.
Yeah.
To
No,
allow
why not?
So
for the
you're
minimum.
imposing your values on him and you're imposing your values
Right.
on me.
Okay, let me
Which goes back to what the
Okay.
point that you're making, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what the difference there is? Because not all impositions are equal. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, the sovereign ones are more valuable, isn't it?
No, they're just more powerful. They're more powerful. But look, if you have an imposition, for instance, you have to wear a red shirt. That is a lesser imposition than an imposition that all people who have glasses have to die.
Yeah, I understand this, but look, no one said all people have glasses have to die.
No, of course, no.
No, that happened.
Don't quote that.
That happened in Cambodia.